Welcome to this edition of Because You're Watching. Now, as you can see from the title, this one may be a bit touchy, a little harsh. So if you have delicate sensibilities, well, just set them aside and keep watching. Now, a lot has been written and said about racism and slavery in America. The plan here is to approach it from a slightly different angle than has been typical. So, let's begin. In discussions of national policies, systems, institutions, and solutions to rectify various inequities in American culture, it has been stated that everything is about race. Now, many don't understand the meaning behind this, but it's attached to the question, why does everything come back around to slavery? And the answer is fairly basic. It was in everything at the start. In this analysis, let's begin with what would be the basis of current laws and rights. As the framers set about crafting the Constitution for ratification and outlining the inalienable rights of the people, a certain faction wished to maintain the tried and true conservative structure of economics, good old-fashioned slavery. With its clear advantages, not allowing this system was a deal killer for continuing the Union. It was believed the country couldn't have been formed or sustained without it. Now, slavery and its ills were not unknown concepts to any of the founders. They debated it. However, the decision made to treat human beings in the most humiliating, dehumanizing, and degrading of ways was considered an acceptable price to form a nation on land they did not own. A better example fitting the term Faustian bargain would be difficult to find. To allow a robust slave economy, out of necessity, what the framers did as they shaped constitutional rights was to form strategies and workarounds. In effect, they created a blueprint on how to circumvent the Constitution, something which, as time passed, has been applied by any with the ability and determination to use it. By agreeing to the compromise and implementing the tenets of the document, a clash of ideologies was created: independence, individual freedom, rights of the people, and slavery with all its associated depravities. This hypocrisy was just the tip of the iceberg, as the citizens were given not only a severe ideological conflict, but a moral one as well. Contrary to any of their positive beliefs and religious moralities, they were presented with, and as a culture, accepted and justified an obscene system with its complete debasement of men, women, and children. In addition, the ideals laid out in the Constitution served as a near constant reminder that they were failing to attain its goals. With this combination of conflicts and reminder, a society was formed embedded with cognitive dissonance, which could only be reconciled by some of the population wanting to believe the reasons surrounding the existence of slavery, and even more needing to believe them. After all, it can't be immoral or evil if it's the natural order of things. For such a hideous institution to thrive, the people learned and taught their children for generations to have less compassion and empathy while elevating feelings of tribalism and a sense of superiority and entitlement. The result? An increased level of human insensitivity and pride. Growing from this was also the more easily accepted idea that any liberties for slaves were gifts given rather than rights which had been denied. Now, to be fair, the expectation by some of the founders was that the evils of slavery would cause its elimination in the not too distant future, so they decided to leave this mess to their descendants to clean up, putting aside the lives which would be devastated in the meantime. Now, however, to accept the idea of such a major societal change, one would have to believe certain things. That those who have been directly advantaged by slavery would decide to limit and or share their wealth and power. That the people in a society which had adjusted to treating a certain group as little more than livestock would see former slaves as truly equal. That the same populace, with the newly acquired insight, could admit their involvement in enabling such a depraved system and accept their own deficiencies. Now, while I'm sure this somewhat unrealistic belief by the founders eased some consciences, such significant social change doesn't often occur until someone dies. Logically, slavery would not go down quickly or quietly. In fact, so entrenched was the necessity to believe in the reason supporting slavery, a large portion of the populace was willing to kill and die to maintain it. They fully embraced enslaving people in a democracy. This destructive attitude caused a war to be fought, costing hundreds of thousands of lives, which only loosened the grip of their belief, not eliminate it, as a few years later, the existing blueprint for working around constitutional rights crafted by the founders would be used to bypass the Reconstruction Amendments. Armed with generations of believing in superiority, entitlement, American exceptionalism, and utilizing the plans for circumventing rights, discrimination completely asserted itself after the Civil War and totally crushed Reconstruction. The strategies also allowed systemic oppression to be exercised as a way of attempting to force former slaves back to the plantations. One can imagine the mentality, the horrific ideas which came to mind and were put in place trying to coerce a group of newly freed people into deciding that returning to lifelong enslavement was a preferred option. The workarounds were fully in play. Anything short of designated slavery could be applied. Jim Crow and immigration exclusion laws, family incarcerations, extreme acts of violence, and countless injustices, America's history of slavery had made these behaviors acceptable and continuous. Although they failed, the actions would last for decades. The founders' decisions caused other long-term ramifications besides forming a society which conditioned itself to accept hypocrisy and human suffering. Having established that certain people were not deserving of respect, the cheapness of their lives, having crossed this immoral Rubicon, of course these attitudes would not be reserved for just a single group. When the bar is set so low, almost all behavioral bets are off. If one group can be abused, any can. Therefore, mistreatment of natives, women, and immigrants of almost any stripe was not surprising. As a reality, none enjoyed the full rights as set in the Constitution except white males. To be continued.